Live in the Self Achievement Network. Hello, everyone. My name is Dominic, and I am here with Andy Ferguson, this gentleman right here. He is in Scotland, our next person behind the passion. How you doing, Andy?
I'm good. I'm really good. Yeah. And I'm not just saying that. I am really good. Yeah.
It's good to hear. So Andy and I just met like a half hour ago. And if you guys remember, I posted in the Self Achievement Network, like, hey guys, I'm back. I take most of the year off from took a little vacation. And so I'm like, okay, so who wants to do an interview? And Andy was I think you were the second one that stepped up. And I want to say thank you for taking the leap. And I really appreciate you being here.
I love being a pioneer. Absolutely love it. So, great. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, so when Andy signed up for the thing and he went to the calendar and clicked, I'm like, so what do you do? What's your specialty? He's like, that's a great question. So Andy he's one of these, he likes to support people in creating transformation in their life through seeing the world a different way, which is also called a paradigm shift. So I wrote on the bottom a passion for personal transformation via paradigm shifts. So before we get into who you are and how you arrived at what you're doing now, tell us, what is a paradigm shift? What does that mean in a nutshell?
Yeah. Okay. So for me, the best way I can describe it is the thing that's happening, um, almost right now to me in real time. My daughter's just sent me a photograph. This is the sunrise in Banff a few minutes ago, right? And she's in Banff, Canada, and it's a beautiful high def photograph. So she'll be having a paradigm shift at the moment. So she'll be arriving in Canada, speak English, at a ski resort. She's lived in ski resorts before in Iceland and in Sweden, believe it or not, in Scotland. But because there are certain cultural artifacts, because there are certain social systems and things in place, she will have this. It's almost like a phase shift. Things that'll like for instance a post box, right? You post a letter here. It looks slightly different in Canada. It would look slightly different in Chicago where you are. So the paradigm shift is this kind of thing of this feels familiar, but actually it isn't. And what it can trigger is this thing that, oh right, not everybody sees the world the way I do. Not everybody is the same cultural alignment as I have. So it's getting a view into a different world, a parallel world. If you're into science fiction, it's that kind of parallel world that exists that you didn't really know, and it's really powerful if you can embrace that. It's really powerful. I met my wife when I was working as a ski instructor in France. She was English, living in France, but she was brought up in Australia. And when we started going out together and conversing, she had a very different set of filters, understandings, that she used to navigate through her life. And by coming and meeting her and learning how to see the world through her eyes, my world changed remarkably. And one of the great gifts, I think, of being an individual is that we accrue this experience that gives us these different paradigms. But the fun is finding people that we can kind of share a different paradigm with, and suddenly our world becomes renewed again. It becomes exciting again. It becomes mysterious again. It becomes all of these things. So you just feel more alive. I think you feel more capable. You feel more excited by life. That's my opinion.
I like it. And I like the last definition of it creates more excitement, and I think that that's really true. So, and another thing that I'm hearing you say is like clarity. So one of my teachers used to say, the more points of view that I'm willing to see or understand, the more of a viewing point that I have. So it's like climbing up those towers. You go to the forest and you climb up the. All of a sudden, you see
Yeah.
the perspective from a completely different point of view. That's a viewing point.
Let me
And
let me give you an example of something that just occurred to me, right? So I used to live in a French town called Les Carreaux, which is in the French Alps. And you get into Les Carreaux by going up this switchback road, and it sits in a valley. It's if you know where Geneva is, it's southeast of Geneva, which is in Switzerland, but nevertheless France is just south of that. So during the winter, and this is not uncommon in the mountains, in the winter you get this thing called an inversion where the cold air sinks down into the valleys, right? And so effectively the clouds sink into the valleys, and if the mountains are high enough, you're actually above the clouds. Yeah. So the ski
Mhm.
resort I lived in Les Carreaux, it actually sat for most of the winter above the clouds. And it was a beautiful sunny blue sky, warm, radiant. Occasionally it'd snow, obviously, because it's a ski resort. But if you went 100 meters or 100, 200 meters or 400 meters or whatever down into the clouds, and in fact, there was a city called Cluse sitting at the bottom of this valley, and for most of the winter, it was miserable and it was grey and rainy and wet and horrible, or it might snow, but you never saw the sun for most of the winter. Whereas just above in the mountain, it was like paradise. And again, that idea that a lot of people are scared or conditioned not to go above the clouds, right? And sometimes the clouds do sink in us. Sometimes we are so pressurized by other things that we can't lift ourselves up, and hopefully you were telling me earlier on about somebody that reached out to you. There are people that assist us to get above that, to rise above that, to encourage us and inspire us to keep going, and empower us through their experience to get above that. And it is not always, it can be a ski resort if it didn't snow from time to time. We got bad weather, but often. And it was just that particular setting. It's not like that in Scotland where I also worked, but in this particular bit of France, it was so evident and so in your face that you could either be above the clouds or stuck in the clouds, right?
Interesting. And you have a lot of background, as I understand it, with skiing and snowing, and you're an instructor. So yeah, that seems like a really good analogy. I think that's great. I was also just thinking, okay, so like we're both wearing glasses. These are not prescription. These are the kind that you buy that are the magnifiers.
Okay.
So, but if I take them off, everything is blurry.
Yeah.
So if I want to create a paradigm shift, I put them back on, and all of a sudden, I can see clear.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
and the same thing with an understanding about a certain concept or physical reality or something like that. When we see other perspectives from different people, we also then gain another perspective, which helps us to have this bigger view of the world.
Well, we didn't talk about this earlier, but let me give you another word that I really enjoy thinking about and sharing with people, and that's educator, right? Because educator, the root of educator is educe, and educe means to bring out, right? A lot of us have heard of Sherlock Holmes' deduce, deduction, which means to work out logically, but educe just means to bring out, right? And so for me, again, this idea of paradigm shifts, it's to bring out something and make obvious that which isn't obvious, right? And good educators bring something out in us. They bring either something about ourselves, they help us become more self-aware, or they bring out something about the world that we live in and help us be able to understand and navigate through that, or take advantage of it, and so once I've warmed up to people, I will often say I'm an educator, but
Mhm.
I try to avoid that out the box because it's so loaded. But essentially, that's what I also, it's bringing things out, either bringing something out from them, wisdom, experience, knowledge, whatever it is, or bringing something out from the thing they're looking at, the place they're in, that will help them understand themselves in the world a bit better.
Hmm. That's great. And I think so. You're 61, you told me, 61 and a
Yeah.
half, 63, almost 64. I've met a lot of people in my life, and I continue to meet people. And when I begin to speak with them, I can always see where they are in their journey. And there's this part of me that is that like I want to jump in and say, but wait, you're
Yeah.
not seeing it yet, and I
Yeah.
was like,
Yeah.
don't say anything. They're on their own journey. They'll see things in their own time. And I also have worked with people where they come to me and they ask, hey, so can you help provide me with a different perspective so that I can then rise above this cloud that I'm in, you know, and that's a whole different ballgame. So, I mean, so what you're doing, I think, is very admirable. It's very needed in the world, and I think that the experience that you're bringing is truly amazing. So, again, thank you, and thank you for being on the show. So this show is called "Person Behind the Passion," right?
Yeah.
So let me bring it back up here. Person behind the passion. And we could talk about all the, and see you have a couple of books up there that
Yeah. 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 Man. Got them. Kids
we'll
name
get
them.
there. We'll talk about those. But like, so your passion is about the transformation. What's your journey? So you were born in Scotland, I assume?
Yeah, yeah, yes. I was born in Scotland, and it's back to paradigms. It's a really strange thing. So I was born in '61. I was born, I think, 3 weeks, 4 weeks before JFK made his famous speech at Rice University about, we choose to go to the moon and do these
Yeah,
things
yeah.
not because they're easy, but because they're hard, right? So even as a nascent, 3-month old, somehow that message got embedded in my head. We choose to do these things not because they're easy, but because they're hard, because these will be the true measure of, right?
Right.
And it's
Love
like,
it.
wow, that. And but also in Britain at the time, we were trying to develop a new paradigm for the nation. We had been bankrupted by Second World War. We used to be the most important nation, the empire in the world. Something like a quarter of the world's commerce and decision making was under the British Empire in 1890 or something like that, right? But here we are, 60 years later, 70 years later, and we're in decline. It's a pretty grey place. I was brought up in a working class family. We were still getting food supplements and orange juice and milk and stuff at school because they didn't think that the average working family could provide enough nutrients through their diet, right?
Hmm.
So that was that. So it was a different world, and it was a world of limited paradigms. So I would like to think now that when I speak, people can see that I'm, fairly intelligent, but I really struggled at school. In these books that you mentioned, I was fascinated by space because that was the space race was happening. I was fascinated by explorers. Britain had this incredible history of great explorers, and we were still promoting that. So adventure and exploration was really stuck in my face. But I was having my own adventure, which was that I was excited by the world and the education system. I just mentioned juice and education. The education system didn't want to bring anything out in me. It wanted to funnel me into a particular mold that I would be useful for. And I was failing at reading and writing, which is ironic because I'm now an author and written loads of articles and stuff, right? And I have vast libraries because I love reading, but the education system that I was a part of was not bringing out, was not developing me, was not giving me the opportunity to fully express. You right above your head, I see self-achievement network. I was not in a culture that really wanted to help me succeed as an individual. I was going to be a bolt in a machine
Right.
and then I didn't fit, and so
Yeah.
so my and I don't think that's unusual. I mean, I've met people from all walks of life who, from rich families who who wanted their sons and daughters to follow a particular path, or middle class families who wanted them to be doctors, lawyers, accountants. It didn't really suit them. I mean, a lot of us have a culture and a community that wants us to be something that we're not really suited to, you know. So as I say, I don't think I'm extraordinary in that sense. I just think that I had enough support from my mum and dad that they wanted to see me happy. They wanted to see me expressing myself. But again, did they have the tools to make that possible? Arguably, yes. Arguably, no. You know, I think that's the irony, isn't it, about self-development, is that you have to do it for yourself, but you can't do it for yourself. You need other people there that can guide and support and encourage and inspire you.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. So I think that that's pretty normal for, you know, I don't like to use the word normal, but that's pretty average normal that most people go through. Similar, I had the similar experience. I mean, the whole personal growth thing, nobody ever talked to me about that. It was, what was I going to do to get a job and make money and, you know, get married and raise a family? And that was basically it. And then all that fear that, you know, in the back of my mind, like, oh my God, am I going to make it? You know, kind of a thing. And what am I going to do? And what do I really enjoy? Nobody ever talked to me about, you know, what do you like to do?
Yeah.
I, you know, had to figure all that stuff out by myself. So there you are, you're this young kid and you're hearing this thing from JFK and you're inspired. And so what was it like to grow up in, you know, like your teenage years? What'd you do? You were a rat, you were a I don't know, a rebel?
Yeah.
Were you one of these, you know, crazy kids, or were you shy and timid?
I think I was somewhere in the middle. You know, it's interesting because I was quite smart. When I went to high school, I did quite well in the first few years because the concepts weren't a problem for me. You know, physics, chemistry, maths, English, the concepts were well within my grasp. It was when they wanted me to express that in a particular way to pass exams that I had problems. So I actually had a pretty good high school. I didn't enjoy primary school so much, but high school, I was, because, you know, they own a box and there's physics and there's chemistry and there's all this interesting. We had some good outdoor education teachers that took me canoeing and skiing and climbing and hill walking. And we had a science club. So I was, and you know, I had some opportunities. But remember, Scotland isn't a culture, so Scotland and the UK particularly, but Scotland isn't a culture that has the same values, let's say, as America, North America, where, you know, success is lauded and, you know, achievement is celebrated. To a certain degree in Scotland, there was this sort of post-empire, you know, don't get above your station. You know, there was a certain cynicism almost in Britain, in Scotland at that time. There was all our heavy industry.
Oh, we lost Andy. Oh no.
The industries were shutting down, right? So we went from, I'll give you an interesting stat. I discovered in 1895, thereabouts, right? A quarter of the total commercial shipping in the world. So that's all the boats that are moving goods and services about were built in one river in Scotland, at the River Clyde. That's a quarter, right, of all the total tonnage of world. That's how important the heavy industry used to be in Glasgow, which is 30 miles away from where I was living. We went from being the Silicon Valley, the Wall Street, the Washington of the world, to being a backwater. So you have to see that has a big influence, right? So on the one hand, you imagine that anything's possible, but the other hand, you see what happens after ambition is bust, right? So I think that really left me in a strange place. But I go back to my parents. My mum was, my mum left school when she was a kid. She never had a really good career. She always was in service. And my father he left school without any qualifications, rose to become a middle management in a telecoms company, a utility company. but my father gave me two guidelines, if you like, right? And one, he said, don't be miserable. Find a happy life, right? Because I think he knew that you're not much good to anybody if you're miserable.
Mm-hmm.
But he also, as a profound Catholic and Christian, said to me, and my father is still alive. He's 91. My father said to me, "You will die at some point, and you will have to give a good account of your life to God, right? If you want to go into this afterlife and have this reward, you're going to have to give a good account of yourself." Now, I wouldn't say that by anything I'm a Catholic anymore, but that's never left me. That idea of you have to walk this balance between enjoying your life, which is a good sign that you're kind of coping, and actually being of some value to others, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the things that I did get from a working class background, all my great uncles and my grandfathers were miners, was a sense of community, was looking after each other, was, we're in this together, right? And of course, there's upsides to that, and there's downsides to that. And if your community is stagnating or declining, it's easy to be dragged down with this. So you have to have that courage to try and move away from it, to express your individuality. And just one thing I'd like to share with the people who are watching today is that when I was about 14, I went to a plastic ski slope. It's just a nylon slope on the side of a hill locally. It's not far away from where I am now. And the school gave us 6 lessons on this plastic slope. You had to walk up and slide down. And there was a poster in the room where that was, and it was somebody skiing in this beautiful environment. And I said to my teacher, "Wow, sir, it'd be great to be able to do that." And he said, "Forget it, son. People like us just don't do that, right?" And I'm talking to you today, and my daughter has just arrived in Banff, and she's doing that. She's been paid to be a ski instructor and she loves it, right? You talk about passion. She's got a great passion for the outdoors, a great passion for developing people. And I tell you, having done that job, it's superb. It's unbelievable. So what I was trying to say there was that, yes, our culture and our circumstances can set a benchmark for us, but we can actually choose to go beyond that if we want. And then we have to find the people to support us. I have to say something to you, Dominic, which is, I just realised my iPad's about to die. So give me 2 seconds to grab my battery and I'll plug it in. I do apologise.
Take your time.
This is the real world.
No, no problem. I totally understand what you're saying. I think that the important thing for me is that as I live my life, I want to be valuable and be satisfied with the value that I've provided. In addition to having a happy, enjoyable, satisfying life, outside of what I'm doing to make a contribution. So you're right; it's multifaceted, and I think that goes for everybody on the planet. I think we all want to have a great life. We all want to make a contribution in some way and use our life so that we feel good about what we've done while we had the time to do it. So when you grew, as you were growing up, were you surrounded by mountains and you grew up skiing also?
I to call them mountains would be an exaggeration. No, I grew. Here's 2 things. I grew up. I used to go to school every day, both primary and high school, looking up at the Scottish Highlands, but they were quite a way away. So I've always looked at mountains since I can think of, and there is something about mountains that really got under my skin. That as we were saying earlier, it gives you a different perspective as you walk into a hill system and then climb hills. You get an entirely different. You're forced to have a different perspective, and so let's say paradigms and perspectives are. We'll just use them interchangeably for now. So walking into mountains changes the way that you understand how to navigate through life. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the first thing. The second thing I used to grow up seeing every day is a hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of year old castle, fortress, Stirling Castle, which was fought over multiple times over centuries. And actually, I was born in a council house, not in a hospital, in a house. But that house actually sits on an ancient battlefield where Scotland, the Scottish Army defeated the English Army, which was kind of expressing itself as an independent nation. So I was actually born on a battlefield, looking at a royal castle and seeing hills behind it. So yeah, I have a particular perspective, and it's part of it's both looking to the future and thinking about space and where we're going and how we get there, but also deeply rooted in the fact that we've fought over things for centuries. You know, we've argued and fought and that sort of thing. So that I think, and I love this about Scotland, it's a very rich, if you decide to dig into it, the whole of life is written large in Scotland, you know, philosophy, science, you name it. It's a great place to, it's a great university to grow up in.
Mm-hmm. It sounds like it. Sounds like your education was expanded by the history. And you know, I'm just trying to remember these movies that I have watched with. Oh my gosh, what's the guy's name? Kevin Costner. And what was the
Well,
name of
Mel
the
Gibson did the famous.
Mel Gibson? That was one of them, and the
Chris
whole
Pine just did one.
right,
Chris
the
Pine did one on.
Crusades and all that stuff, and it's mind blowing, really, that people, humanity, went through that phase, you know, and the brutality and the oh, I mean, I can't even imagine now. Say, you know, president saying, okay, we're going to have a war. Let's get your, you know, your armor on and your sword and all this stuff, and let's go chop people's arms up. I'd be like, are you crazy?
Yeah,
Ain't gonna happen.
Talk about paradigm shifts. No, I mean, you know, it's and that, you know, reading accounts. You know, you live in the land of cowboys, right? We had cowboys before you guys even had a country, and we had people that were driving cattle on foot across mountains and valleys and streams and things for hundreds and hundreds of miles, trying to keep these beasts apart. We had a trade war. Scotland went effectively bankrupt at the end of the 17th century because the English closed the border and we couldn't export beef into England. And that, and among various other things, meant that the country was effectively bankrupt, which meant that we had to form an alliance with England. But here's the bizarre thing, Dominic. The circumstances in Scotland meant that although we became really poor in comparison to our other European neighbours, because we were better educated, and there's a backstory to that one, we were able to, when we joined England, we were able to exploit what England was doing. And basically England has some, at that time, I think it was eight times the population. Now it's got 10 times. But they had the Royal Navy, they were expanding around the world with the things. The Scots were able to come in and, because they were better educated, get very important roles within the empire. And Scotland got rich off the back of being part of Britain, which, you know, there's a lot of people who've got the resentment. This is a personal development channel, I believe. So there's a lot of people in Scotland still 300, 400 years later resent the fact that England effectively, you know, invaded us economically, but we became the superpower that we became because of that. You know, so it's not what happens to you. I know it's the old cliche about, you know, not if you get lemons you make lemonade, but the reality is that's what Scotland's history's taught us. You know, you will get, we call it kicked in your arse, you know, kicked in your ass. You know, you will get kicked in your arse. It's whether you choose to get back up and you know. It's a cliche, but it's true.
That's great. You are really fascinating. I want to know. So, okay, so I get your childhood. You grew up around mountains. where did the skiing instructor part, like how did that get in there?
Oh, you shouldn't even go there. So I was talking to my brother last night
Well,
about this.
let me just tell you, we're short on time. We can always come back.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
But
So remember I told you about my wife. My wife changed. You know, when I met her, she changed. My brother changed my wife remarkably. And as I say, I was talking about it last night because we don't talk about this. Um, our family, my mum and dad, and my brother and I went on a holiday on a tour around Europe in a caravan with my uncle's family. And it was a great road trip, right? And when we came back, my brother was, you know, that feeling that you get when you've just had a marvelous vacation and you just sunk down, you're like, oh. So he was sunk down, and he looked at the calendar and said, my next holiday's in January. I'm going on a holiday in January and you're coming with me, he said to me. So he booked us a ski holiday in Austria. And it was because it was the only thing that was immediate and he could book and we could afford. So we went off to Austria on holiday. And we had such a great time. And when I'd left school, I'd played in a band, and then I got sacked, and then I was working in the records office in a hospital because I couldn't do anything else. But I'd walked into town one day and I saw this new hi-fi shop was open. I knew nothing about hi-fi, but I was kind of interested in electronics and I was interested in music. And the guy called George Russell spoke to him and he said, yeah, come and work. I started working for George and I went away on holiday with my brother, and I came back and George had committed suicide. So I was unemployed, and that was a big kick in the teeth. So in the space of about a day, I went from the high of being in this incredible environment, the Austrian Alps, skiing and having this great time, to I was unemployed again, and this great mentor that I thought I found had killed himself. So, you know, it was pretty full on. I eventually applied and got a place in a college in London studying electronic musical instrument design, which was brand new at the time, at the end of the 70s. I went down there, spent 2 years discovering that although I'm fascinated by music and electronics, I have no aptitude for either of those. So I came back and sold hi-fi for a couple of years, but knew I needed to do something more with my life. And at 25, I went off to France on a ski holiday, and I never came back. I washed dishes in a hotel, I cleaned toilets, I did whatever I could to earn the money to stay in France long enough to improve my skiing. And then I moved back to Scotland and became an apprentice ski instructor at the age of 27.
wow, that's incredible. Now, did you end up going back to France? I think I
Yes, so I spent 2 years in Scotland as a ski instructor, and I knew I'd done the odd thing. I'd done the odd half marathon and things for charity, and I had this idea that I wanted to go on adventures. So I keep saying to you, I wanted to do these adventures. So I started doing more and more things. So in between two of the seasons when I was working in Scotland, I went back to France where I'd been cleaning toilets and stuff. And I ran around. So there's a big mountain called Mont Blanc. It's the highest in Western Europe. Some people say it's the highest in Europe, but Russia's got depending on whether Russia's in Europe or not. So I decided that I'd do this thing for charity and write about it. So I ran 128 miles around this mountain in 4 days, up and down, like the height of Everest twice by the time you're going up and down and up and down. Mm-hmm. And that was really exciting and fun. And I was doing newspaper interviews and radio interviews, and I thought, this is good. And so the next year, so prior to going back to France, I thought, I've got to up this, right? I've got to up the game. And I was thinking, what have I got to offer? So I had some very pretty female ski instructors that were my pals. And I had a couple other guys, and I said, right, I'll tell you what we'll do. I saw it in a French ski magazine, guys skiing down sand dunes. I said, let's go to the Sahara Desert and we'll ski down the sand dunes of the Sahara Desert. And we called it Ski Team Sahara. So so that was another thing. I mean, that got me on TV and magazines and all that sort of stuff. And again, that taught me the idea that if you can see the world differently, if you can understand other people's worlds, you can achieve amazing things. So magazines are always looking for, good pictures and good stories. Radio, this is obviously pre-internet. Radio stations are looking for people to come on and tell tall stories. All that sort of thing. So, and then if you're getting people's attention, I mean, this is all pre-internet. If you're getting people's attention, you can get sponsorship. People will give you sets of skis and bindings and clothes and helmets and goggles and all the stuff you need. So when I went back out to France, I hadn't spent any money equipping myself because I had sponsors. And I was a nobody. This is the other key point to make, Dominic. In the world of skiing, I was a nobody. I hadn't won any races. I wasn't, but I used what I call reimagineering. I'd reimagineered something, and I understood that magazines are looking for something different. Sponsors are looking to get people's attention. So they if you say, I'm going to take some pictures of skiing down a sand dune in the Sahara Desert, that's, and by the way, you don't have to pay the budget. You just have to, it's thinking that way. Win, win, win. How can I create these transactions that everybody feels they get something out of it? Yeah.
Yeah. So you have photographs, or you were photographed and put in magazines?
Yeah. I've been in a few ski magazines. I was in one not that long ago, actually, because where I live, there's old shale mines. They used to dig for shale here, right? And they just used to put the aggregate up in big hills. So effectively, there's all around me, there's these big artificial hills of red aggregate from shale. And I kept driving past them thinking, I could ski down that. So I went out and I tried it, and then once I got it right, I put on a suit and tie like you would go to the city in, and I skied down these bings. We call them bings, and it's and
in a suit and tie.
And a suit and tie, yeah. So I had to practice a few. I had a few tears and rips and went through some clothing because it's not easy. This stuff. Oh, you only ski down it because it's basically all falling down with you. You've got little rocks and stones and boulders and stuff falling down with you. But it was just, why not? Why not?
Why not? That's right. Wow. Wow. Fascinating. You have a lot of stories. Okay, so let's do a wrap. You're married. You've been married for how long?
It's easier to say. We met in 88. We got married in 94. So however long that is, a while.
So 88, 2008, 18. So 25 years.
Yeah.
That's great. And you have two.
I don't know how she's put up with me.
I understand that one too. So you have two daughters, you said, or one?
No, I've got a boy and a son.
Okay, so a daughter and a son. Okay, you've got the two books up there that you've written, and so what are you doing currently to support people in this paradigm shift? Do you have a program, or are you just selling books, or what's the coaching? I mean, I don't know.
Well, yeah, I think just recently I've realised that there's a lot of people in their 50s, a lot of guys. I mean, I would, in the past I've worked with both men and women, but I think 50 is one of these things where the biological and maybe even the cultural differences become emphasised, right? The sort of midlife or post-midlife experience is different for men and women, and I understand that. So people that are guys that are invested in something. So it could be that maybe that made a business, or it could be that they've, built their family. 50s is that time where, physically and culturally and emotionally, all these different factors are re-examined, right? I'm reluctant to say this in public, but because it is a private thing, but my brother-in-law died earlier in the year. He was 59. And my father always said that to me: in your 50s, you start to see, people start dying around you, becoming seriously ill, or, their health's degraded, and they've reached the peak of their career, and they're starting to kind of wonder what's happening next. So I'm particularly interested in working with guys that are in their 50s to help them develop themselves, develop into something that is their life is still fun, and they're finding other ways of engaging in that, because we all want to be stimulated, we all still want to go on adventures, we all still want to do rewarding work, we still all want to be appreciated, but there's a lot of questions and a lot of answers that we're seeking round about that. And prior to COVID, I was getting a lot of North Americans coming over to Scotland, and it was actually quite nice because that paradigm shift I was talking about. If I take somebody out for a walk in Scotland, even if it's just a day or two, they stay somewhere nice, and I'll take them out one day and take them out another day, and I'll intentionally get them quite tired, because if you say to someone at the beginning of a trip like that, "Why are you here?" Right, it's an ambiguous question that a coach would ask, right? But you say, "Why are you here?" They'll come out with something that's pretty obvious and something that immediately springs to them. After 2 days of being exposed to a different paradigm, Scotland, and all the stuff that I can throw at them, and I say to them, "Why are you here?" you get an entirely different answer. I've done my time doing coaching in 5-star hotels and suites and stuff like that. You get them out for a walk in Scotland where the weather's changing every 5 minutes, where the lighting's changing, the history's hitting them in the face, the reality of, I'll take you to a graveyard that's, there's people in there that were buried 500 years ago. And that sense of perspective changing, and it's not just changing the paradigm once, it's multiple things over a day or two. You have insight after insight after insight that you just won't get at home. So yes, I'm in any time of year, because Scotland's the same every summer, winter, and autumn or fall. Every day in Scotland, it just keeps changing. So it doesn't matter what time of year you come to. So that's one thing. The other thing is I'm working with partners with people that are interested in developing younger change makers. So people that are concerned with all these cultural, social, climactic, social, political challenges that we're facing, crises that we're facing. So it's not something that I want to do full time, but I'm working with younger facilitators, mentors, coaches, because they're saying, we're getting all these people that are stressed and concerned, and so I often help them with the people development part, because there's a lot of good people out there that are trying to make the world a better place. They don't need maybe the deep level of personal development work that you represent, but they need some of that to be able to deal with their own hopes and dreams and build better teams that can tackle these bigger issues. So that's another thing. And then the third thing is really, I'm just going out there and trying to satiate my own excitement for the world. So I still go and do my own walks. I'm still working on adventures. I'm writing a book about my travels. I've travelled about 7,500 miles rather on foot around Scotland the last few years. So I need to write that book. And lastly, I suppose try to deal with the after effects of discovering that I had a serious heart problem last year, which came as a complete surprise, and that changed my life, because I was used to thinking of myself as being invincible, and I discovered that I was millimeters away from having a heart attack, and had to get surgery to sort that one out. So and that's left me with that reality that I could, if I'd carried on the way I was going, I would have had a heart attack and died, and probably somewhere remote. Daughter and I had been planning to go to the Himalayas to do some stuff, and I wouldn't have came back. The altitude and the exertion would have killed me. So I've still got it as a goal. So I'm, I need to train. My cardiologist says I'm prepared enough that if I train well enough, I can get back to the Himalayas, which is somewhere that is obviously the ultimate mountain range for all sorts of reasons.
Yeah, it's amazing. It's just listening to you to talk. I mean, I can sense the urgency about using the time that you have left to do the things that you want to do. Because like if all of a sudden this thing stops. I mean, I've one of my best friends in the world for 30 years is in his truck. Pardon me. And you've heard these stories before, and all of a sudden he has a massive heart attack, and dies.
Yeah.
And he was only in his mid 50s. And
Yeah.
so, this is like, wow, such a wake up call. Amazing. All right. Okay. So here's what I'm gonna. We'll leave. I have one more question, and then before we end, before I ask you this question, so if people would like to reach out to you, they can reach out to you with the link in this thread. That's uh, the way to get a hold of you.
Right, I'm not seeing it, but the best way of doing it is we're in the middle of switching over websites and stuff. But my email is very easy, and if somebody emails me, I'll send links and things. But my email is Andy Ferguson, AND. This is the dyslexic speaking. ANDFERGUSON. Andy Ferguson at me.com. So it can't be any simpler than that, right?
Okay.
And if somebody sends me an email, I can send links back and all, which are up to date, because we are literally building a new website and new back end as we speak.
Okay. And I would recommend just when we finish with this interview, you can just go into the thread and just type it in. Hey, if you'd like to reach out to me, here's my email. That way it's there. Otherwise, it's buried in the video.
Okay, right.
Right. So anyway, all right. So obviously you've been around, you've got a lot of life experience, and you've met a lot of people in your lifetime. Let's pretend, okay, that the entire population, every single person on the planet right now is watching this interview. So we have the attention of humanity, the whole population, right? Everybody's listening. That's a lot of people. What message would you like to send to humanity?
I'd like to pass on my dad's legacy, which is being happy and making a difference. Being able to change people's lives are not mutually exclusive. You can follow a passion, you can express yourself, you can have these sublime moments, right? There will be moments of despair, I took myself off to France way before it was easy to communicate with people, and was on my own, alone, cleaning toilets, right? But just before we came on air here, I got a picture from Banff for my daughter, and it's the most incredible, beautiful photograph. And I know that bringing up my kids wasn't easy. A lot of guys do struggle. We want to go off and do big things and do important things, and sometimes we kind of ignore what's in front of us. And my wife was really good at pulling me back and saying, don't save the world, just make sure your kids are well looked after. And now you can see what you invest in will be reflected back on you, right? So think very carefully about what you're investing in. And I think you can invest in yourself and the people that matter to you and in the world. And you can, somewhere in that midst, you'll find a way of having a lot of fun, doing a lot of good work, being appreciated and rewarded, and having a great life. And if you are watching this and nobody's in your life supporting that, then email me and I will, because there's 8 billion of us, but one more person living a life like that, having the belief and the desire and the support to live that life, that's what I live for. I want to help people. My life was wasted if I don't have the opportunity to help and serve as many people as I can.
That's exactly right. That's great. That's a great message. Thank you.
You're
Amazing.
welcome.
Amazing. So, okay, well, I'm going to push the stop button. All right, you stay there. We'll come back into our room, and I want to say to all of you, thank you so much for watching. I so much appreciate it. If you have the desire, want to come and do a little interview with me, please. I'll leave the calendar link in there. You can sign up. And Andy, please, I'm going to leave this in your hands. So anytime that you want to come back, you have the link. Pardon me. So you can schedule your time again, come up with a topic or excuse me, something that you want to talk about, and then we'll come back live and then we'll do it again. and start where we picked up. We'll pick up where we left off.
Okay.
Sound good?
Yeah, absolutely. No, absolutely. Thank you, Dominic. Yeah, I appreciate having the opportunity to speak to you. Hearing your story before we started was amazing, very uplifting and inspiring, and so thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Okay, everyone, have yourself a fabulous day. Remember to stay inspired and have fun.
Yeah, have fun.